Welcome, New Meta Podcast, episode 103. A bumper episode indeed, talking about itemization as our main topic, but also how have games been, the arcana last 8, and maybe a brief word on the metagame overall. Marco, welcome as always. It's a late night pod, it's an after dark pod. How do you think it's going to go? Are we going to be able to stay awake?
I mean, when you come in to talk about Dota, there's no struggle to find the energy. We could talk about Dota all night.
Yeah, we've got all night LAN pedigree, so I think we'll be okay.
Yeah.
I think we'll be okay. It's TI week, and usually during TI week, we'd be staying up until like 4 a.m. watching Dota anyway, when it's over in NA. I mean, it's actually such a Pepe hands that we'd be in Sweden this week.
Yeah, we have to have, minute silence is not out of question here.
I know. And someone that I've never seen in the flesh that I would have seen in the flesh. Adam, our friend from across the pond. How are you doing, Adam? I know, yeah, if it was bad, we'd be soaking up some quality Dota right now. But anyway, welcome to the pod.
Some Swedish sun.
Yeah, I mean, right now you'd be in some bar talking to some like Herald Swede like about Dota 2, just loving life.
You mean Loot Monkey?
Hey. Yeah. Well, I booked a week off to go to TI, and then it's been cancelled obviously, but I still have a week off. I didn't rescind my annual leave. So I've been getting some games in. Perhaps do the question first, though, and then we'll get back to games. Marco, do you want to intro our question this week?
Wait, the question's not how does someone's upbringing affect the main role, is it?
No. That's next week. That's a little teaser for the listeners for next week. Do we talk about which one we're doing? The trip down memory lane. Do you all agree that in general the average Dota 2 player is a lot better nowadays than the average player a couple of years ago? Adam, I'm going to let you start because Marco's confused about the questioning on the pod today.
I lost track of the question. I'm okay.
Are people better now than they were before?
Yes.
Average player.
Yes.
How so? What's the key difference? Maybe think one or two examples, or I don't know, not even just.
Let me think. There are more players. It's the same thing with StarCraft. Like just like the longer the game's out, the more people learn. All the casuals drop out. So the only people that are left are the grinders, the people that really enjoy it, and there's just more and more content to consume. There's more streams, more as TI gets bigger, production values go up, people learn more, they try and implement what they see. And it's like you'll hear that on a pro broadcast every now and again that like some 5K stack now could just absolutely mop the floor with like IG at TI2 or something.
Yeah, I think so.
Just because people understand the map and like spells, synergy, item builds.
I think it'd be really interesting to know the stat of what the average play time is or the median play time is of a Dota player, because it's going to be at least 3 years, if not 4 years, I would imagine, because it's such a hardcore game that people have been playing for a lot of time. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is a lot of people in the last, say, couple of years, but I would have thought, just because there's so many long-time players, that the average is like 4 years or something. So that'd be interesting. But yeah, I would definitely agree that the average or the median player is way better. It's like you can think of the anecdote that at one point in time, pulling the neutral camp to the lane and making a pull was groundbreaking. It was just revolutionary. Or if you stack a neutral camp, revolutionary. Like at one point in time, these concepts didn't exist, and then they were found out by the best players in the game, and now 10 years down the line, you got heralds pulling and stacking camps. The game has been figured out well, that then obviously it's going to trickle down.
You said that the average players only played, or like probably 3 years. but I've only played 0.8 years.
Only
0.8 years of actual time.
Four
Four-fifths a year. That's my game time. I just did them.
you did the maths.
Yeah.
Roughly 2.6% of my waking life has been spent in the Dota client.
That's remarkable. That's actually remarkable. I'm actually scared to work out mine. So
I'm at 6,986 hours. 6,986.
It's
That's
actually
a lot of
not.
hours.
It's not that much more than me. It's actually not that much more than me at all. I'm
not even an expert, right? Malcolm Gladwell, Outliers. I'm not at my 10,000 hours. I'm not even an expert. I shouldn't even be on this podcast.
And even then, when you reach 10,000 hours, all you are an expert then is you're an expert at being in the client. You're not even an expert at like playing the game.
Expert. Yeah,
you're just a client expert. Yeah, and I've only been playing since 27. My what?
Is it 3.5? Was it Jan or Feb 2017 for you?
So it was Jan. I played about 2-3 games in January 2017, and then didn't play another game until March. So I would say March is when I actually started playing.
Yeah.
So I'd count it from then. So I guess March 17 to 18 to 19 to 20. So that's like 3.5 years, right? Wow, that's so long. It doesn't feel that long, but my word, still feel like I still feel like I'm a new player versus everyone else.
The average could be like 5-6 years, honestly. I wouldn't be surprised. So it wouldn't be crazy to say you're this relatively new player.
Maybe if you include Dota 1, like people that started with Dota 1, it could be about 5.
Anyway,
quick answer
game's
is
been
yes.
out a long time though.
Like Q&A.
Yeah, the answer is yes.
It's just like it's the StarCraft analogy, or like a lot of games use the Bronze League to Grandmaster. It's like when I stopped playing, I was in Diamond, and a Diamond back then in like 2013 is probably gold or platinum now, just with the way it's kind of worked out.
Although my Bunker Rush is timeless, so
yeah, 2 racks.
Yeah, it's proxy 2 racks any day of the week. About once a year, I log back into StarCraft 2, cheese a Zerg, and then come out satisfied.
Today was a good day.
Yeah. Let's go to games then. Marco, last time we heard it was Ags for days. Is the balance shifting a little bit more towards regular Dota these days, or?
Yeah, I would say it is. Last week's games recap was pretty dark. There's a couple of mouldy games, but this last week has been more positive. Got back to the comfort 1 role, had some slapping 45 kills slaughter game, that was fun. Had a solid anti-mage game, that was fun. Void game, all solid. You had an amazing Void game, and we played what I said at the time was the guild's best ever game of Dota, and the best win the guild has ever seen, and I stand by what I said, because it was a 65-minute mega creep comeback against a considerably more favourable stack. And for context, it's the stack of my uni captain and his buddy, so there's a lot on the line. And phenomenal scenes from that game. Maybe you can like gloat how good your Void was, because it was very good. And then some labbing. You missed out on me, Nick, me, Adam, and friend of the pod, Nice Day Nick, had a smashing level 2 run yesterday. That was pretty sweet. It's been a pretty positive week.
Wow, very good. Adam, games?
I've only played 2 real games, and they both weren't even close, so...
One was the game we played earlier, is it?
Yeah, that's why I was really keen to play another one, but then Marco had to swoop in at the 11th hour.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to play support, I guess. Until I get a win. I played Bane and Rubik. I was just like, this is an Ags lab. I don't know what to do anymore.
Yeah.
What do you mean I just can't kite heroes endlessly and walk around?
Yeah. And why is the game not stopping at 5 minutes in for some weird like goose minigame thing or something?
Yeah.
My games, played a lot, which is really nice. In fact, looking at the activity page on my Dota buff, it's like the good old days. I did mention in the last pod that this week is my return to ranked, getting real. Started it off with a big 6-1. Not all of these games are ranked. I'm just running through games that I played since I had my week off. A big 6-1 on Sunday, then a 3-2 yesterday, and a 3-1 today. And actually, today particularly, I had a lot of stuff to do, so I'm pretty happy. I managed to get 4 games in. I'm currently sitting at 67% Ancient 3, so I've already gained a star, because I started off approximately, like, with no percent, so approximately, I guess, 40% of getting a percent, if that makes any sense. I don't know. So, kind of a star up already. The verdict, though, is solo ranked as a carry equals hard. Party ranked as a carry equals easy. And solo ranked as a support equals easy. That's basically my rundown. It's kind of funny. The games I played POS 5 in solo rank have been really good, and I've felt like my impact is like so strong. On 5s, just win the lane for your carry and then have super high impact. Like I played a Jakiro and an Ogre, and I've got like these crazy KDAs, really good, decent farm, like doing lots of stuff in the games. But a lot of my solo ranks as carry have been like real struggles. In fact, the only 2 games that I've lost in this ranked session, I don't know what my record is, something like 8-2 so far. I think I played 10 ranked games so far this week, and I've gone 8-2, I believe. 2 of the losses were both as the carry, and 2 of the wins as the carry. I won a Sven game in solo ranked, and I won a Naga game in solo ranked, and they were both really tough games. The Naga game went like an hour long, and the Sven game I just got carried. I played really bad and got carried. So it's kind of been interesting. I'm pretty confident that I'll be getting at least 1 star though by the end of the week, which is good. And if I get to like Ancient 4 50%, then I'm just going to keep playing ranked and just go for Divine, I think, because it's not that long, not that far from there.
Yeah, it's pretty fun that there's this little guild squad of you Ancient.
Yeah.
Gunning for Divine.
All like high Ancients, all similar MMR. That's dynamic aesthetics and me. They're both going to get Divine soon, I think. If we keep partying up, they will, because we're an unstoppable force.
You need to queue but not party and take them down on the other.
That would be so epic, actually. Yeah.
You know what's going to happen is like you're going to get to Ancient 5 70%, and they're going to finally roll the season after like a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like now is the time to reset the season that's staying as close.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind if they did that, because at least then I could fly into calibrations well practiced, rather than just flying into calibrations having not played ranked forever like everyone else, it seemingly. But yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. This pod is recorded on Tuesday night, by the way. It's probably going to be released on Thursday, but it's recorded Tuesday, so to clear up any confusion. I guess next episode we'll have the full lowdown. Well, I'm sure all the listeners are waiting with bated breath for all of my results, no doubt. Smiley face. Sarcastic, by the way. Right. Let's go to the Arcana. We're into the last 8. What are we dealing with? Who's in client? Is anyone in client?
Yes.
What are we dealing with, Adam?
Lion versus Faceless Void. Sniper versus Anti-Mage. Spectre versus Sven. And Invoker versus Witch Doctor.
What's the hot take?
Witch Doctor's going to win.
The meme vote?
Yeah, that's what I threw all my 60 behind.
Oh, God.
Because Lion doesn't need an Arcana, because he already has 1 million Immortals and special items. I don't even know what you would make for Lion. And so I have to vote for a support, so that leaves Witch Doctor. And then it just happens to be the bonus meme that is, it's Reddit's pick this year.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you look at the votes in previous rounds, though, because say you look at Doc, he was against Drow and got about 3 million votes, but then say the Invoker gets 5-6 million votes. Or if you look at Spec previous round, Spec got about 6 million versus Sven winning with 3 million. So I'm just
looking at weird
You're looking at
the
the week
wrong
before.
one. Yeah, you're looking at the week before.
So that's what I'm saying. The week before, people are actively
No, you're looking at 2 weeks ago.
Spectre had 9.5 million.
Yeah,
votes.
Spectre had almost 9.5 mil this week in the last vote.
Oh, I'm looking at the 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Sven had 5.2. I think it's a pretty comfortable spec win.
Yeah, it's annoying. I lumped all of my votes on Sven, but I don't think he's going to win there.
Why would you do that? You already have that 6 sword. You know whatever they make for him would be a sword.
That is true, yeah. I do have Shattered Greatsword. Thanks for pointing that out.
Okay. You think Invoker will get beaten by Doc?
Yes. But it's probably the closest of the week.
Yeah, I agree. I think Doc will win that, but I think it'll be very close. But I don't see Doc going any further. I think Spectre will win if they face each other.
I wouldn't mind a Spectre Arcana.
9.6 million votes on Spec last week. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
I think that's the most out of all 8.
Void
got
had
10.
10.5.
Yeah, 10.5. Okay, so it looks like a Void Spec final. At the moment.
Void is
a miracle, but
What are the top 3 that you'd be okay with? Like, actually winning and getting Arcana. Not who you think's going to be in the final, but like who would you want?
Sven, Spec, Doc for me.
not Void.
Oh yeah, sorry. Void, Spec, Sven then probably for me. I like all 3 of those heroes.
Yeah, I'd say Void because I like playing him. Doc because that would be cool. Then, yeah, maybe Spec would look cool with an Arcana.
It's fascinating that Sven's even there. He's not not a popular hero.
Well, there's always like somebody sneaks in. Like, how did they get there? And I mean, he beat Lich, Treant, Protector, Alchemist. Like, it's not the strongest bracket that will go through.
Yeah,
I would go with Witch Doctor, Spectre, and Sniper. I think a Sniper Arcana would be pretty good.
I want to play the Sniper, but then I'd play it and just get shit on and get annoyed when they counterpick like Storm. Just 5 counterpicks when you have to first phase it.
Yeah, I would love to spam, like Peep Joe or Say Goodbye to Your Head voice lines.
Yeah. I'll be the worst one. Are we in agreement? Invoker would be the worst.
I don't want to live in a world where Invokers picked every game with Arcanas.
Yeah.
Because the enemy that picks Invoker is going to be like well practiced, amazing. It's going to be really annoying, and then my Invoker is going to be terrible.
Yeah, definitely. Final point in the introduction was going to be a little general talk about the meta. I don't know how much we can even say on it. We haven't played that many games. I played a few. But the Omega League's been going on at the moment, which looks quite fun. So I don't know if anyone's been catching any of those games, any noob from UAs or anything. I don't know, has anyone seen any of that?
Nope.
They've had a break over the last days or today. So I think I watched EG stomp someone, and then that was kind of it. Then there was a bit of a break. The takeaways I got from tiny bit of watching is that Veno was first phase. Everyone's like creaming themselves about how annoyingly good Veno is.
Yeah.
And Clock was also first phase material.
Darkseer
is popular.
Yeah, definitely. That's pretty much my takeaway as well. It's like Darkseer, Doom, Veno, a lot of really strong offlaners basically, or those 3 in particular. And then beyond that, Tiny 4 is being picked a lot. Phoenix being picked a lot. Rubik being picked a lot. People like Rubik. Faceless Void seems to be the one of the best carries. Spectre, which we already kind of knew Spectre and Faceless Void are the strongest carries. And Void Spirit, honestly, is actually seeing a lot of play as well, which is kind of surprising to me. He's got a 25% pick rate at the tournament. So he's in a quarter of all games. And given how many bans there are these days, that's a lot. Tiny tops that chart with a 42% pick rate, although a negative win rate, only 45%. All very interesting. And Marco mentioned Venomancer. He's in a quarter of games, 25% pick rate, 70% win rate. So very, very strong, no doubt about Always deceptive though, these pick rates. You kind of want to see bans and stuff like that. I wonder if I can see that quickly.
Yeah, it's interesting how... So Doom's got the most pick plus bans.
Right.
185 bans, 33 picks. When it's picked, 55% win rate, so that is decent.
Interesting to see Bat Riders so contested. The hero doesn't seem to be some meta-crushing hero, either in pro games and in pubs. I mean, certainly not in pubs, kind of a specialist hero, but you do see Bat pop up. I know Weeha loves a mid-Bat.
Yeah.
A lot of off-laners, I guess, like the Bat is a classic.
Even in the mid, I think it's Bats for often this pick where they go, haha, I'm going to fuck you up. So rather than it be some kind of meta-dominant hero, it's very much lane-dominating hero, and if you can play it, fucking hell, I think Bat's a hard hero. If you can play it, you can seriously stomp.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
But you have to depend on your team.
Sad face.
Yeah. Hashtag
That's what
pops.
makes it tough.
Yeah, for sure. Anyone got any general comments about the metagame? It's kind of hard to say.
No, but this weekend I was home, and my brother does, he dabbles in some sports betting, and he was like, I saw the esports section, and they had Dota listed, and he was like, he thought about calling me, like, he's trying to remember the match he saw that was on, like, the ticker. It was Business Associates against somebody.
Interesting.
That'd be just, like, funny to be like,
yeah.
Who should I bet on? Back in the day when I used to do that, I should have told him bet on Business Associates. That's what I did. That's what got me my big win, since that's an EE team. You never bet against EE. That's what I learned.
Nice.
How big was your win on EE? Did you get an arcana?
$400.
What? What did you?
What? Really? My word.
I bet on C9 against Navi. This was like 2014.
Wow.
And Navi was undefeated so far in the group stage, and I bet on EE, and I won $400, and then I was like, what if I, like, why did I do that? That was like so impulsive and dumb, and then I stopped. I never bet again after that.
Wow, what a story! You just win $400 and then just...
Well, that 400 put me up to 1,000. Like, I had won 1,000, and I was like, no, that's it, I'm done.
Wow, that sounds like a career to me.
That was my first year of grad school, and I was like waking up at 3 a.m. to look at the lines for C Dota games, like Team Arrow versus, I don't even know the name of the teams back then. And I would
Execration or something.
Yeah, Execration, or there's one that's like FD. I can't remember. Or like I don't even think Zenith was a team back then even. But I was like, yeah, I'm going to bet on all these C League games, get my bets in, and go back to sleep and wake up and see how I do.
That's pretty dark. That's almost as dark as Marco's depths into like Dota trade or whatever. I remember you were into that.
That wasn't dark. That was like the most wholesome thing ever. Trading items to get better items. I had no skin in that game. I got a fucking sick pudge at the end of that 2-week sweat adventure.
Yeah, I had like all the winnings was in like Dota items.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So then you have to liquidate them, but it was pretty cool. Winning $400 and then you get all these arcanas into your account, and then like, I forget what that item's called, the pudge mustache, like the dirty mustache that like is worth $50 or $60, and I mean that's how I got my Faceless Void Battle Fury, and that was like the one item I was like, I'll keep this just as a memento of time, like of that time I was a degenerate gambler.
Yeah, definitely. Extra prize, I can't promise a pudge mustache, but a pat on the back for who can guess the only ignored hero at the tournament of the Omega League. There's only one hero that hasn't been picked or banned at the tournament. I'll give you a clue if you want.
Yes.
the clue is probably going to give it away, but the clue is it's one of the last 8 in the Arcana vote.
No way. One of the last 8. Sniper?
Okay, I have it pulled back up.
Yeah, Sniper. Sniper's the only uncontested hero at the time. Even Pudge. Pudge has had a pick. Pudge was picked and won a game of Dota 2. So that's when you know your hero's bad, is when Pudge is winning Dota games and you're not being picked. Topic of the day is itemization, something that I've been thinking about quite a lot in my recent games, because I've had a couple games that were kind of decided by items, or at least very nearly decided by items, exclusively. A very important topic. Marco's spells special episode is coming next week, and this is the prelude to that, the item episode. When it comes to choosing your items, what it goes into your thought process? Well, I think the first thing is to think about what you actually need to do in the game. Like, what does your hero need to do in this game of Dota 2? And that's usually linked to position. I feel like if you're playing a position 1, it's usually quite obvious. You need to carry the team, i.e. do a lot of physical damage usually, farm in order to achieve that, etc., etc. Before we move on, does anyone want to set out any more like definitions to itemization, like what you need to be thinking pre-horn in terms of, do you need to be thinking, what are you thinking pre-horn basically, because you kind of want to have your items more or less a blueprint set out at that point, right?
I think you want your first 2.
I was going to say the same thing. The first 2.
And then feel the game, how's it going? You kind of get an understanding as the game goes on as to what you need, or what is more of a threat or less of a threat than you might have first thought. So yeah, I feel like you plan your first couple items as a good start point. And that would usually be pretty consistent. If you're playing a hero, usually the first couple are pretty standard. I guess there's a few paths, or a couple paths you could take, like say you're carrying, you're thinking, is it a Midas, is it not, is it Mask of Madness, or is it just like straight into MKB? Maybe there are a few branches to consider. Yeah,
there are branches to consider. I feel like, to give an example, a very easy example, Faceless Void is a carry hero. He's got a relatively consistent item build-up. Certainly I thought that before. I had one game in particular where I didn't go for a certain item that I desperately needed, and I didn't realise that until after the game. But take Faceless Void. He needs to be able to farm in the game, just in general. Needs to be able to basically be a chrono damage threat, I feel like, and then later on needs to man fight. And so that's why you see the classic item build being Midas to tick off the farm side of things, and the scaling
a bit of
side
attack speed.
And attack speed, yeah. Into MKB, say, which makes you a damage threat in chrono, so you can get involved with chrono and usually get solo kills with it when you have the MKB. And then later you want to be able to man fight, so that's when you get your BKB, you get your Aghanim Scepter, you get your other stuff like that, Butterfly, Satanic, stuff like that. That lets you just man fight. You don't need to just have chrono at that point. So I feel like that's quite a simple example. Marco, I heard your spacebar go down when you pushed to talk.
I mean, I agree. A comment I put emphasis on is that I think the early game items, first item, second item, often a bit of chit chat what that should be. Say in the Void case, is it a Midas, is it Mask of Madness? I think that decision is always going to be fine. I think it's more the mid to late game item choices. Naturally, they are bigger, more expensive. To me, they are the ones that are more important to get right. And so say you're a Void and say you hit your first 2, let's say Midas MKB or Mask of Madness MKB, or maybe it's something Mjolnir, like similar price. I think that's always going to be fine, the path you go, early game, mid game. But then say that third item, I think that's really where kind of the value of thinking and understanding your game, understanding the hero, etc. comes in. Because say we're on the Void example, do you go Axe? Do you go BKB? Do you go maybe a Satanic? Do you need to get a Butterfly? Do you need to get a Mjolnir, say? You have got a few kind of important choices there. And I mean, it's a very different path if you go BKB versus, say, some
Ags.
butterfly or Ags. Like, these are very big different items, and so it's in this mid game to late game period where I think it's really important to get it right. And obviously, it's going to be game dependent what that choice is or what that optimal choice is.
Yeah, you have to be, and in order to make that decision, you have to sort of think about what exactly. So if you're going to go BKB, it's usually because you need to, do damage in Chrono, right? I would have thought. Or when you versus going something like Ags is usually you're expecting to be running around, catching, fighting more, and you're not as worried about purging stuff off or being stunned and stuff like that. Usually you go BKB when you Chrono and you just get ice path or disrupted or like etc etc etc. You need to be able to like actually hit.
Yeah, BKB is a big one, and that will be picked up in the vast majority of games because it's such a strong item. I would see it more as you want a BKB so that you can hit and fight unconstrained, as opposed to say BKB in a Chrono. But there will be games where, say, the enemy lockdown. I mean, maybe it's not hard enough that it doesn't stop you jumping around, so you can skip the BKB. That might be the case. Or it might be the case that, Orbs BKB is always going to be value, but maybe it's more necessary that you've got a butterfly so that you've got the necessary evasion, or say the PA classic where you needed MKB and you've got to adapt your playstyle to be, all right, avoid the disables of the enemy, forego the BKB because I absolutely have to get MKB, maybe something like that. So for a carry, to me, we're on this carry point. I guess we can just like round it off. The carry is always going to be in this balance of how aggressive and offensive is your item kit allowed to be versus how defensive does it need to be. And obviously there will be some games where it's screaming for a BKB because they've got 4 spellcasters, say, and you just cannot operate without one. But there'll be other games where, say, they've got 2 or 3 strength heroes which don't have these hard disables, where you don't need that BKB. Maybe the Ags is fine because you're always able to jump around, or maybe a butterfly is omega value because they've got a really big right clicker that you're not killing in Chrono, but you need to stand and right click. Like they've got Sven who doesn't have MKB. You're getting omega value from a butterfly, but you wouldn't a BKB. So this is now the balancing act comes in. Yeah.
Adam, to think of a different position, say position 3. To use a classic example like Centaur, a lot of people that listen to this will think either always go Blink or always go, crimsony, lotusy, hearty kind of stuff. How do you like make that decision, or like what kind of things do you think about when you go into that decision?
You don't want to hear my Centaur build because it triggers Marco, I think.
Oh, let's hear it.
Because I just farm. I just go the side lane, and just farm. And then once I have like 4 items is when I start doing things.
Yeah, I don't think this is a suitable PSA.
The anti-mage Centaur.
Yeah.
We gotta censor this.
Because I just go like Crimson Heart before I do anything. Or like more stuff too.
Yeah. Crimson to not take damage from the creeps.
Oh, it's just so no one can come to my lane.
Yeah.
How else are you going to kill that 4 stack of ancients that you did for yourself?
It's Stampede's global. You have impact.
That's true.
I mean, you just need to time it for when I'm using it to get away, and then
just use it to get from camp to camp quicker. I think that's the play.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that hero is a Blink first hero anymore, anyways. But you do need. It ends up always being the thought. They got the 3 options, I guess. You can go Blink, you can go Vanguard, or you can go Hood. That's like the first 3 choices after Brow Boot. And I mean, you usually go Hood because it synergizes with your W. You take less damage, right? But sometimes it just depends on the enemy. It's like, do I need the Vanguard to man up? And like, is Crimson Guard like super value this game? Like, because Crimson Guard falls off. Like the earlier you get it, the better it is. The earlier you get it, the more you can fight, and the way better it is. You don't want to be getting that like 4th item, 5th item. It's like, if I get this thing at 15 minutes or 17 minutes, we can just take towers and no one can do anything.
I think a really interesting point with threes, Adam touched on that there's this small pool of items that you are going to go for. So say you're this, Centaur's a great example. You've got a pool of Vanguard, Hood, Blink,
Blade Mail, I guess.
Blade Mail, potentially. But what's really interesting with most threes, and then in particular threes that buy a Blink, is the progression of your items. So saying the carry case is very linear. You're going to start an item and finish an item. In the offlane case, if you're going to start getting a bit complex and optimal, it's not always the case that you finish an item as you build it. Brown boots into Blink, or is it brown boots bracer Blink? Is it phase bracer Blink? Is it phase Blink? Is it phase bracer wand Hood Blink? There is a lot of different permutations you could take with your early game item progression. And I don't think there's always a hard, clear, fast way to do it. I think it's fine, to just go out, I'll build bracer, then phase, then Blink. But if you're really kind of maximizing your game, that's not always the path. And like you say, with something like a Vanguard or a Hood, I think there definitely will be games where it's better to rush that before rushing Blink, because say you're more lane dominating presence pushing. But there could be games where, and I feel like I've been in games of offlaners where they delay the Blink too much, and they get that Vanguard and they got that bracer and they got that wand, and they're like, oh, look at me farming or pressing lane pressure. And in my head, I'm like, where the fuck's this Blink dagger? Why has that not been prioritized? Because in the game we're in, I seriously need you 12, 30 minutes Blink stunning someone and making kills happen. I don't need you like a buff, AFK, irrelevant hero. So I think 3 is interesting because game state's going to say it's not always one hard, fast rule. But then once you get to the mid-game, you're going to have kind of standard items. But before you get there is a bit of choice going on. Like a Mars save and how you progress that item is kind of going to change a little bit. Bristleback, like all these, Pit Lord even, I've not played him recently, but I imagine that there's a few different routes you could take. I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think the heroes that want to build a Blink, ultimately, like a Centaur, like a Mars, like a Sand King, say, these heroes that you see pop up in the offlane, for those heroes, the itemization is more interesting. The Underlord example is kind of, say, a lot simpler, and the Bristleback example is not quite as basic as Underlord, but a little bit simpler, because I feel like the pool of items are smaller simply because you don't have really offensive potential particularly. I mean, Underlord can go something like an Atos. Bristleback, I suppose, could do some high damage build if they wanted to. But I feel even on heroes like Sand King and Centaur and these Blink heroes, it's sort of similar to the carry. You want to think about how offensive versus defensive you need to be. Like if they're running at you, if the enemies are running at you constantly, even if you're on a Sand King, which is like this incredible Blink hero, you see pros often, they'll just go like pipe first item, because they don't need Blink because they're being run at. Like the Blink doesn't really do anything for them. Like they'll get it later, sure, because the game state's changed and suddenly the tables have turned and the Sand King's team is now more looking to be offensive, so the Blink becomes this incredible item on Sand King, as we know. But they'll just rush pipe because they need to hold, or they'll rush. Crimson's a little bit more of a special case. You don't see that as much on a hero like Sand King, but you could definitely see it on a Centaur. Some Centaurs don't get Blink for a long time if they feel like other heroes are providing that Blink initiation, and they'd rather be a super tanky, soaking spells, soaking items kind of thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and then also there's also Halberd as well. If you specifically need to disable an enemy PA or Sven or something, get a Halberd and changes the way fights are fought. And obviously Halberd's an incredibly underbought item, I think.
Just sticking last point in the early game with the Blink example, I absolutely agree that say you get it first, there are games when it will be dead value. The same way a first item Vanguard may be dead value. And it's like, in my mind, I think about there'll be a Sand King and they'll do really well in the lane, and they'll get like a 6-7 minute blink because they're like, wow, it's gone so well, I've got so much gold, I can get a really fast blink. But then you get it.
7-minute blink, that is insane.
Yeah, I've definitely been in games where this has happened. They get it, and then it's like, well, really, what are you doing with this at 8 minutes, 9 minutes?
It's not a stat item.
Yeah,
That's why I don't like the Centaur blink first, because you blink in and you just die.
Yeah, so I mean, first, like say, I mean, I do see a lot of pro games, a lot where they have brown boots blink and a hood, say, so not finishing a phase and not getting a bracer, say. So there is a bit of variation with the Centaur. But yeah, they will always get a blink eventually.
Yeah, sure.
Then the Halberd shout, yeah, Halberd's such a good item. I think this is now in our mid-game category, kind of second or 2.5 item for a lot of offlaners. Some strength mids as well. It is such a good item, strength, evasion, disarm. But yeah, I would very much classify that mid-game. Obvs game dependent. Obs should be an obvious pick, like if Halberd's going to be of value. I think with offlaners, this mid-game pickup, it's very much just looking at the enemy team and saying, yeah, what is the threat? What's going to be highest value? Is it disarm? Is it a 4-staff push out of some like Ricky Smoke or something? Or is it, I need the pipe for all this magic damage? I mean, what other items might Centaur get?
Maybe Lotus Orb he likes. It's quite Lotus is kind of like a third item though. You never see it rushed. Ags and Shiva, yeah, they're later items too.
I'm just looking at this last Centaur game I played with you guys, or with Marco, and I went Blade Mail, Wand, Vanguard, Blink Dagger. To be fair, I had all that by 17, so
it's pretty strong.
That's pretty good. But yeah. I remember Marco being sad. Even though he went 9-1-8, so I don't know.
I mean, it was a very difficult game, I felt, because we were just abandoned by our offlane Centaur. It was very tough.
Let's bring us into the present here. Going to another position then, which is, I don't know. On the one hand, you could say itemization. There's not as much to talk about when it comes to supports because they have less items.
It's more important. You have less slots. Yeah. You get less gold.
The contrary point would be, well, if you're only going to buy 1 or 2 items, you better make them at optimal, or you really are. There's no coming back. When it comes to itemization on 5, say, Adam, particularly, what comes into your mind? In the early game, I often feel like, I don't know if we bother touching on this point, but how much to focus on getting getting arcane boots like quickly, or into your second item. Just first item. How do you sort of dissect that? Like, do you rush arcanes, and if so, why? And stuff like that.
I would only rush it if you had a good lane. If you got a first blood and you can get the boots, you're well on your way to getting arcanes. But I wouldn't prioritize it. I mean, a lot of the time that's 900 gold that you have to not spend. You're probably much more well served by getting a wand and a windlace or something, and some sentries. But you just got to look at the game and think, what do you want to do, and what on the enemy team prevents you from doing what you want to do, and if you have any way of mitigating that through items. So this last game we played, I played Bane, and they had a clockwork. So I was boned. And I didn't buy a 4-staff, and that was a mistake.
Yeah.
I went Aether Lens and then Treads just to have some sort of strength, just to have a little bit more tankiness, and then I went Ghost Scepter because they had a PA. And I probably needed a 4-staff. It's just a sad thing. It's like Bane feels so good with an Aether Lens, but sometimes you actually need anything else. It kind of is the dead item from a survivability standpoint.
Yeah. Marco, when you look at the classic support items, you're looking at Force Staff, Glimmer Cape, Ghost Scepter. I don't know if I'm forgetting any, but those seem like the ones that stand out. I suppose Aether Lens. Is that decision tree as easy as it sounds? You know, are we losing to magic damage Glimmer? Are we losing to... Am I dying to physical Ghost Scepter? Do I need to get enemies, like relocate them Force Staff? Is there anything else you want to think about, or is it that simple?
I think the choice is simple, but I think the choice is the most game state dependent out of the positions.
Yes.
So, say all the other positions, you start the game and you've got an idea of what trees you're going to go down. But I think with the 5, it's very much dependent on how your game goes. Say, Adam says, do you find yourself with a big lump sum of money? Say you got first blood or a kill or two, or usually when you get kills, you'll find yourself with more than usual. And I think, say, with the Arcane Boots pickup, to start with, if you happen to have that much money early on, I think it is value. Say, like, you can get it at 5 minutes. I think it is value because you're spamming spells in lane still, and you're with your lane partner, giving spells, you're a lower level, so your mana pool's lower. I think you get value. But say 8, 9, 10 minutes in, I can afford Arcane Boots. I think at that point in the game, you're actually not going to get that much value from the active, and you could just get a wand and a clarity in your mana pools enough, and you're not using as many spells because it's a bit quieter. So Arcane Boots is not value. So, and then going further, say we're a Bane, staying on that example, if I'm playing Bane, I'm gunning for an Aether Lens. Like, I want an Aether Lens real bad. But if the game's not going too great, maybe I'm dying a bit too much, and I go, I need to just get stats on the board. I need to spend my gold before I lose it. Let's get a Bracer. Or they've got a lot of magic damage. We're not crushing. So, all right, let's get a Hood into Glimmer. So,
a Cloak into Glimmer.
Into Glimmer. So you see how, depending on how that game is going, like every 5 minutes, I think that will really kind of swerve you from path to path. I think you'll always have an idea of that key support item. Is it Glimmer? Is it Force? Is it Ghost Scepter?
Is it Blink? Is it... Yeah.
Or is it Blink? Yeah, you've got that key one in your mind, but it is going to depend how the game pans out and plays out, whether you can actually get there or not.
Yeah, and this segues us nicely into, I think, the not missing piece of the puzzle, but certainly the other side of the coin when it comes to items. And position 5 is the most obvious, position 1 the least obvious, and that's like what the enemy team wants to do, right? Position 1, mostly they're itemizing to enable themselves. And I think as you go through, it changes more and more into itemizing to stop enemies. Not always the case, though. Just to kick us off on this sort of topic with a classic example that I ran into, I played Void earlier this week versus a Clinks who rushed Orchid. And the same could be applied to any hero that rushes Orchid, particularly global heroes like Nature's Prophet. Clinks obviously very fast. But even something like a Storm Spirit if it's getting it quick, or a Quap. I desperately needed Manta because I was just dying to silence. To Clinks would just silence me, I would just die straight up. And we talked earlier about how Void's item progression is quite simple. You know, you go Midas, you go MKB, you go BKB. Well, this game, that wasn't really an option for me. We were sort of on the back foot, and I needed to be very defensive, or else I was just going to be constantly targeted down by the Clinks. And so really I feel like this game I should have, in hindsight, gone Midas Manta, perhaps even just Manta straight up. And then we mentioned Clock's another classic example. Clock would be another hero that versus Clock, you need to have a 4-star, and you're obviously not going to get that from your Void, you're going to want to get that from your Bane. A Centaur's another classic example. You're against a PA. The Centaur would love to get a Blink to enable himself, but perhaps it's better for the team that he gets a Crimson Guard or gets a Halberd to stop what the enemy team want to do, because the enemy team are playing very aggressively, they're ahead, etc., etc. How do you see the point of enemies informing your item decisions? The Void example got me thinking about stuff like that, basically, because in this game I definitely needed a Manta style.
Yeah, the Manta is that scenario of, I need to get a Manta because there's a Clinks. To me, sometimes that can be a bit too plain to lose. And I know, okay, so in that scenario, maybe it is like, 95% the right idea to have gone Manta. But part of me is thinking, is that actually the best item in the game just because it's countering that one singular factor? So I know in some factors like PA, Halberd is singularly so goddamn good, it is optimal, but sometimes when you're on the back foot, I feel like you can't kind of succumb to, I need to get this one item that's going to deal with this one factor and ignore the other 5-6 factors I need to consider. So say in the Void case, maybe if you get Manta, great, you get rid of Orchid, but you don't have DPS. Like, Manta Illusions are shit. It's a very expensive item. You got a Yasha and a bit of stats. It's not a great hard carry item versus, say, I need to get MKB, I need to get MKB butter to have enough like damage output to possibly win this game. I know Manta's going to save me from Orchid, but I can't just focus all my game on that one aspect. And I feel like often when you're behind, you have to take these more ballsy decisions and you have to kind of play to win and itemize to win. And then in the reverse, I think, interestingly, when you're ahead, I think you itemize to win again. And I've said this before, but when you're ahead, I think that's one of the best times to get BKB. And when you're behind, I think that's one of the best times to skip BKB and go for like the jugular. I need like raw damage, say, to ever have a chance. And so say with this, they've got one hero with one factor I need to counter, get that one item that's great for it. I don't think that's always the best shout.
Yeah, definitely agree both with your shout about BKB. That's just, I won't elaborate because I think you point it out perfectly. And then also, yeah, I agree with the general point. I feel like in this game in particular, I mean, I went Midas MKB and I never even finished the MKB. So this was just like a game where a Clinks popped off. So I feel like in this case, I'd kind of... you say I wouldn't have DPS, but ultimately I'm a Void versus a Clinks. Like, if I get a Manta, their mid hero can't touch me anymore. Which is like...
You never got Manta, right?
I didn't even go.
Sorry, you didn't even get MKB, so you wouldn't have ever got Manta anyway.
Well, no, I would have got Manta. I would have got Manta.
Did you finish MKB?
No.
That's my point. So if you couldn't afford MKB, you couldn't afford Manta. You lost the game before you had the goal to theoretically get Manta.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have gone Midas. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe, but that's part of my point, that you lost the game irrespective of your item choice, and so obviously that's a gameplay reason that you lost. It wasn't I didn't have Manta therefore I lose. Well, you never had enough gold to ever buy Manta and you lost. So actually, if we therefore take out this Orchid factor from the game, you still need to go MKB and kind of normal Void damage stuff, and you just need to adapt your gameplay to deal with that factor. I think as a carry, that's more the case you'll do. I think as a 5, it is, I need that singular kind of counter defensive item. Say there is a Clinks and you're a Bane, or a Ghost Scepter's just a GG item, that's what you want. You need to survive that Clinks, and you can afford it, it's 1.6k, but for a carry to go, all right, I need to not get Orchided, let's spend 5k achieving this, I think often that will not be the best route to you winning the game. Because instead it's this play style issue, and like you need to counter that gameplay issue, not with an item but with play style.
I don't think Manta's bad on Void against Clinks because
that's slow.
It's not. It gives you a Yasha, and you can use the Manta illusions that hit during the ult.
I think Manta's a really bad DPS item if you don't have like a mana break multiplier with it, something like that. I think it's really overstated the DPS value of Manta. If you compared it with MKB, I think it'd be blown out of the water.
Oh yeah, now that MKB has Blitz Knuckle and it's like giga strong.
It's like as expensive as Daedalus though. Manta's seriously expensive.
4.6.
That's expensive.
It's just
expensive. It's less. It is like
it's S and Y, basically an S and Y. But it's like Stan needs to have a game. You know what I mean?
But saying this game though, I think it's interesting because he doesn't even complete Manta.
Right.
I mean, I had enough gold for it. I had MKB. I had the gold for MKB at the end. I just couldn't get to the side shop, and it's kind of irrelevant. It doesn't really matter. Because, I mean, maybe I couldn't have got to the side shot for my Manta, so it doesn't really make any difference. But,
yeah, that's what I mean. And I think there are other games with POS 1s where this is the case, where someone on your team goes, oh, there's this singular factor that my POS 1 has to contend with, so buy this 5k item to deal with it. So some games, like, someone might say, this is probably the rare case, but get BKB because of this one thing the enemy team has, or get a Lincoln, say, that might be an easier example, because of this one thing the enemy team has. But if you're like this hard carry that needs to be damage dealing and carrying your team, that's not necessarily, you can't necessarily afford to do that, because you need to, say, get that next farm damage item to kill the enemy team, or to snowball hard enough. And if you take your foot off the pedal by going too defensive sometimes, you actually don't help yourself. Like,
no, I agree with what you're saying totally. It's not, I agree for sure. It's not as simple as, oh, the enemies have this hero, therefore I build this. It's not, I understand it's not that simple, but also at the same time, it's like, this specific example, it's not like Manta isn't an item on Void. It is sometimes.
I mean, I think I could, I don't know.
It's the fourth most popular
Manta on Void.
Fourth most popular item on the hero, yeah. It's only behind MKB, BKB, and Mjolnir. It's got a higher win rate than MKB, just throwing that out there.
Well, you'd have to have a good chance to win the game if you're throwing it by getting Manta.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever built Manta on Void. Genuinely. I'm really surprised it's that highly picked.
The top guide on Dota buff is Midas Manta.
Wow.
Midas Manta Diffusal is the top guide.
But yeah, for carries, I do think there is a much more scope for what your item is.
Right. Just before we move on the guide page, all of the top builds on the first page, apart from one, have Manta first item.
For Faceless Void?
One has MKB first item, the others are all Manta first item. Just throwing that out there. Yeah, for Faceless Void. We've got Midas Manta Diffusal, we've got Treads Mask MKB, Treads Manta MKB, Treads Midas Manta MKB. So,
I mean, I'm surprised there's such a high Manta pick.
And then, to be fair, the next page is a bit more MKB. There's still one Manta though. Anyway, the point, Marco's point, is still valid though. It's not, don't bait yourself into buying. A classic example, say, maybe a more easy example would be going Lincolns on a Morph versus going E-Blade. You might think, oh, well, I'm against a Legion commander, so I'm going to go Lincoln first item. Actually, it might be a playstyle issue, and actually you need to not give the enemies a chance to duel you by being on the front foot, initiating, and just instantly nuking a hero with E-Blade, like playing aggressively, something like that.
Yeah,
even if the Legions had a good game and has killed you with duel once or twice, it's not like, oh man, I've died to duel once or twice. I wouldn't have died if I had this 5k Lincolns. Because if you go Lincoln, suddenly your hero's just not got a crushingly enabling item, i.e. E-Blade or more, for so long that you lose the game anyway, because it's like, great, now I can't get duelled, but I'm also not a Morphling. I'm also just not able to do anything.
Yeah, and even say you with that Void and you got the Manta, and then Clinks one time tries to kill you and you Manta it off. Every time thereafter, Clinks goes, okay, Void's no longer on my kill radar. The other four heroes on his team is, and now I've forced Void to get this one item, which may not be optimal because maybe there's a PA or something.
Yeah, it's not as high damage as MKB.
I think 1 and 2, POS 1 and 2, definitely have the biggest degree of error for their item choice and what they could buy, very broad. And I think out of the positions, their item choice, naturally they're buying more items. I do think they have the biggest room to kind of throw and reduce your game winning chance by building the wrong item versus, say, if we think of 5 or 4, if we think what's that item the 5 needs to get, well, it's going to be obvious if it's a scepter or if it's a force staff or if it's a glimmer cape. It's pretty obvious and which one they need, but 1 and 2, it's not always super clear, and you could go down very different paths.
Yeah, let's do a final sort of topic when it comes to itemization, and this is the choice of greed versus tempo, I guess. When looking at the enemies, we talked about it. For your own team, how greedy can I build here? But also when you're playing against a super greedy lineup, you probably want to alter your item build as well. Adam, how would you look at that? Say you're playing like a Doom off lane, so just to move us away from core, like POS 1 that we always seem to focus on. If you're playing like a Doom off lane, say, or any kind of 3, and the enemy team is super greedy, they have an Arc Warden mid and they have like an anti-mage or something, what kind of adjustments are you looking for? Do you build your same old, you doing your same old thing, or are you trying to like squeeze in a different item to own the map sort of thing?
Oh, you don't want to hear my Doom build because it's like my Centaur build where I just go super greedy.
Yeah, even against the anti-mage Arc Warden lineup.
I'm pretty big fan of Midas on Doom. On top of already having a built-in Midas, just being giga farmed. But Doom's a good example, because you already can go late with those heroes, because first off, you neuter all their gold by pressing your Doom button, and then also you have a built-in Devour that gives you gold, so you can go late against anybody, and that's without a Midas. But against those heroes, I would specifically make sure that you can get your Doom off. So that's either Blink or Shadow Blade, or both. And having probably the Centaur creep to stomp, and then you're good to go. And then everything else, just make sure you get off the Doom. So BKB, AC for the team, Vlad's for the team, something like that. And then big late game Ags, because you just get big stuns and breaks.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, he's like Doom's a hero where it's like your most important spell is also the name of your hero. Like, you exist to do this one thing, and it is to turn off the correct hero in a team fight or an initiation. So everything your hero does needs to be through the lens of, I need to do this thing at 25 minutes into the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Looking at, I'm going to set you up with another example, Marco. I think a classic hero that I would think of that can go two ways, can go late game, can also go very high tempo, and that might depend on what the enemy lineup looks like. Say you're playing a Dragon Knight mid, and if you can think of a better example, I'm happy for you to insert any hero. But just basically a hero that has a choice between building very tempo to be very strong to peak in the sort of 15 mid game basically, versus peaking a little bit later. It might depend on what the enemies look like. How would you navigate that choice? Say you're against a really greedy lineup versus a very tempo lineup.
Yeah, interesting question. So the greed, I think we can also correlate. Say if the enemy's got a greedy lineup, it correlates with how aggressive and forward they're going to be. So if they're a greedy lineup and you're thinking of these Arc Warden anti-mages, they are very much on the back foot. They're not going to be kind of in your face, being aggressive, being tempo, and vice versa. If they're not a greedy lineup, it's likely that they're going to be online earlier in your face, etc. So then that, I think, largely for the mid, definitely informs whether you need to build defensively or offensively. So if they are greedy and you are a DK, I think you don't want to match the greed too hard. I think in some games you could kind of slip in a Midas Blink, or I think more sensibly would be, all right, they're greedy, they're on the back foot, they're passive. I really need to not like play passive, not to build defensively or like tank myself up. I need to build something that can get me accelerating the game, moving, making stuff happen. So that's going to be Power Tread's Blink. And so, I think if there's a greedy lineup on the enemy team, then you've got to be thinking of active, aggressive items like a Blink, or if you're a spellcaster, I could go Yules. That's more defensive. That's when enemies are running at me and I need to bail. Or I can go Orchid, and I can do that because I'm the one that's attacking. I'm the one that's got my foot down. So, depending on how greedy the enemy team is, to me, that's going to dictate how active and aggressive the enemy team is going to be. And then that dictates, okay, is my itemization going to be, again, it comes back to, is it defensive or is it like tank up, get stats, maybe get like doing BK, PT halberd, or is it going to be offensive? Is it going to be PT blink?
Throw in a drums, maybe. You know, if you're a DK, you might think, oh well, let's run at them with like a drums, and it gives me sustain and good stats, like a cheap build-up item that you might otherwise skip if you were just. You might, yeah.
I think drums is a good shout if with your team you're being active and trying to make fights happen in that early game, 15-minute timing. Then a drums is a really good pickup to do that. So yeah, if they've got a greedy lineup, you definitely, I think in most cases, want to punish it. Because it's like, say, if it's an Arc Ward and Itemization, saying you're a DK or you're a Quap, these heroes can't trade farm as well. Say if you're like an Alchemist, then sure, you trade farm better and you're happy to both teams be in the back foot and you'll come out on top. But typically, greedy enemy lineups are gonna farm and gonna want to go later, so you do have to respond and go, okay, I'm gonna take down your towers. I'm gonna force the towers. I'm going to force little skirmishes with my drums or my blink, and I'm really going to put pressure on you. I'm going to be at your tier 2. I'm going to build BKB after my blink because I'm going to be hitting your tier 2s, and if you want to defend it, I'm going to fight you with my BKB and what you're going to do. So really aggressive gameplay, complemented by your items. Yeah, I think that's how you'd approach the enemy team being greedy versus not greedy. If they weren't greedy and they're in your face, then you've definitely got to be adapting to that and building a bit more defensively, or else you're going to get run over. So yes, build your stats or build your Yules, build your wands and nulls or braces, that kind of thing.
Drums.
Your drums. I think also on the mid, particularly if you're spellcasters, like an int hero, I think the item choice in the mid game is very interesting because they've got, to me, the most paths they can go down. Be it, do they have to be really defensive, like a Yules or even BKB first item sometimes? Do they have to be more utility? Again, maybe Yules, Orchid semi-utility, Vessel on the mid sometimes is a great pickup. Do they need to go like hyper aggression where it's like Orchid Maelstrom or something like that on a Quap? Or do they need to go like an Ags for some reason, some other kind of utility? I think mids have a really broad range, and then beyond that, say like your second or third main item, is it a Shivas? Is it a BKB? Is it a Hex? Is it an AC? All the viable options as a mid, even if you are like a tempo spellcaster. And I think those, what choice you go for can really swing the game, because there's mid tempo, DK, Quap. A lot of the game is going to be played according to your movements and whatnot. So you have got a big part to play in dictating how the game goes. And then if you're building, say, I'm just obviously thinking of Dynamics' case of he builds an Axe, and to me, why it was really bad, because that's just a damage increase in spell, but you're not fighting enough for it to be worthwhile, and your damage output source is not mainly Sonic Wave, versus the enemy team have got loads of physical right clickers. So why aren't you just like getting a Shivas to beef up and decrease the damage output so that you can win a fight by just not dying and them dealing less damage? Kind of to me, a simple trade-off, but in the heat of a game, it can be easy to not fully think through.
Well, the other argument is that like, if you properly position, you get more out of the Ags than you would the Shivas. Like, if they don't go on you, but that's a lot easier, or like a lot harder to actually pull off.
Yeah, and that's assuming none of them are ever right-clicking your team, and therefore you don't get value from the minus attack speed, or very unlikely. Assume that you don't get right-clicked either, very unlikely.
And the Shiva, you farm fast. Like, you can clear waves and you get to your next item faster, even if you aren't like using it for team fights.
Yeah, true. Yeah, that's definitely true. Or maybe like you need to kind of put all your eggs in the basket of disable and go, I need to skip BKB or skip the Shivas to get a Hex, because it's so fundamental to locking down one of the heroes.
Yeah.
So with the mid hero, I think their item choice gets pretty messy. But yeah, earlier in the game...
Yeah, definitely, I agree with that. The mids can be very tough, especially the tempo mids. Lena's one, I think, that's hard, can be quite difficult to itemize as well. Just
I think
out of my heroes.
Yeah, early to mid game though, gauging the enemy's like level of greed and level of how active and tempo the enemy want to be can definitely help you understand what you want to be doing or building. Because say with the Lena example, there could be games where you're like, I need to go brown boots Yules because I need to put my foot down and delay the enemy's farm because they're greedy. But there could be a game where you go brown boots of travel into Shivas or something because you go, well, actually, I just need to dodge the enemy team. I don't need to try and hunt for kills. That's not the most value this game. I need to just go a bit later, so I get boots of travel rather than yours. Very different item choices that will completely change the way you play.
Yeah, you can even look and think, well, I actually want to go Aether Lens like Ags and just be long range, stay very much on the periphery, throwing spells and doing a ton of damage with my ult. Like, there's lots of options. I think as just a general PSA, not really any... not much to do with the... Well, anyway, whatever. On these tempo heroes, you mentioned Quap. We could look at something like a Storm, Lena as well, these tempo mids. I think an item that's often overlooked is BKB. We talked... It's very easy, I think, really easy when you play a mid to overlook BKB and think, oh my goodness, all items look incredible when you're mid, I think. Whereas I think in other positions, it's easy for certain items to, you think, oh, well, I'll just get BKB if I'm on a carry, because that looks incredible for me because I can just stand and hit. But a lot of these tempo heroes that don't just stand and hit, it's like, oh my goodness, Shiva would be incredible. Like, oh my goodness, Hex would be incredible. And it's true, but BKB often it's the most OP item in Dota 2, just as a general rule. Magic Community, it's kind of insane what that actually gives you. It counters basically pretty much like 90% of spells in the game. Like, it's this crazy item. So I think just as a general rule, it's undervalued and should be considered a little more on the tempo mid heroes.
Yeah, I think pros buy that item on average 1.5 items faster than
genuinely
people, and they don't care that late game they're going to have 5-second duration BKBs, because how many times have you seen a Quap blink in and get blown up 20 minutes into the game, 24 minutes into the game, instead of just like blinking in with a BKB and just wreaking havoc on supports, getting a double kill and then taking the 5v3. Like, it's so obnoxious how good it can be. And people are like, this isn't flashy. This item that just lets me do whatever I want for 10 seconds.
Yeah, and how often in pro games do you see like an anti-mage or even a juggernaut or even a lifestealer? They'll buy
BKB.
Pros will buy BKB on those heroes. You'll never see that in pubs. Maybe when you get very high you will, but you'll never see those heroes buy BKB in pubs, almost ever.
Lifestealer BKB is fun. Rage BKB, then Rage after. It's like... Yeah,
it's pretty strong. Morph's another hero that people don't want to buy BKB on hardly ever. I feel like that's quite a lot of talk on itemization. Marco, do you want to give us like a 1 or 2 sentence teaser trailer for next week on spells? What have you got in store for us?
Hard commitment here to the
spells
episode. I mean, I think it would be interesting to talk about all the different positions and the way you get the most out of your spells, how you use them, when, why, like positioning with regard to spells, targeting with regard to spells. I think these could be interesting topics.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you heard it here first. Spells. Until then, though, good luck to me in my continued journey into ranked, and have a final whistle. My word, what a sign-off. I just wished myself good luck and then said final whistle. That is incredible.
We're all rooting for you, Stan.
Yeah, flame corner right there.
Yeah, flame corner from the listeners. I can feel it coming. But there you go. Until next week.
Get out, Craig.